Service led by its cabinet secretary, that is Justin Biden Muturi, will be of course focusing on the public sector reforms conference. Once we're able to get those links, we'll be sharing them. But for now, in the first hour, to bring us or take us through this particular conversation of what are the hits and misses over the decades since its promulgation. That is the 2010 Constitution. You do remember that 14 years ago, Kenya welcomed or ushered rather the Constitution of 2010 with immense hope and pride. The promulgation marked the beginning of what was envisioned as a transformative era, a time when every citizen will finally enjoy the full spectrum of rights and freedoms guaranteed by one of the most progressive constitutional frameworks in the world. The Constitution was seen as a powerful tool designed to protect the marginalized, promote equality and uphold justice across all sectors within the societies. Now, to help us navigate through this document on what we have been able to achieve for the last few years or so is none other than Sami Meli, a governance and political expert. Sami, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Next to Sami, we do have Lynette Mavu. She is the member of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. Welcome, Lynette.
Thank you very much.
And then finally, we do have a professor in the house, that is Professor Peter Wanyande, a professor of political science and the former CIC commissioner. Prof, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the show. Let me start with you, Sami. We are talking about a constitution that is yet to be fully implemented to what our forefathers had envisioned. So what are we looking at this particular document when we say, are we doing what we were told to do within that particular document? Have we confined ourselves there, or we have been able to work around it?
Thank you very much. The new document, the 2010 Constitution, is a progressive document, and I think there were transitional clauses on when some parts need to be implemented. There are still a few issues here and there. For example, the national government is still battling with the county government on the health sector, the agricultural sector, which are already the devolved units, devolved sectors of this economy. And therefore, I still believe that there is a lot that needs to be done. Other than devolving those units, also the funds needs to be fully devolved, because as we look at it, there's no reason as to why the national government should remain with 3/4 of the national budget when most of the functions have been devolved. I think we still live in the old era whereby everybody thinks that they can do the things their own way. But 14 years down the line, the national government should have realized that some of the duties should be fully devolved, like that health, I say, because there's no need keeping some of the things that have been devolved already. And once you devolve an issue, you also allow the funds to be channeled there directly. So, but overall, the national government and the county government need to work in synergy. They need to work together as a team, because at the end of the day, we swear allegiance to one constitution of Kenya, the 2010 Constitution, which is very progressive. If you look at some of the things, the 8 provinces, I would hear the other day Gen Zs talking about going back to the 8, because they never lived in that era, where somebody would move all the way from Kibish to Nakuru as the headquarters. It didn't make sense, because the administration was very far from the people. In as much as we say we have devolved corruption, we need also to fight with the corruption. We need to allow the EACC to do its work. We need to give it prosecutorial powers. And remember, the Constitution did not give everything. It allowed Parliament to make some adjustments on how it will be implemented. Unfortunately, there are so many bills lying in Parliament that are still needed to help this Constitution be fully implemented. At the same time, the Constitution allows citizens to participate fully in their government. Those who lived in the Nyayo era, where the president was the working constitution in himself, he would declare this and goes unchallenged the new constitution allows us even to challenge the president on some declarations that are unconstitutional. And that is progressive. And that is why the entire African continent looks at us. We are the first, they are firstborns. In as much as we were born in 1963, others came first, but they have not picked. We are that middle-born child that picked so fast and did better than the firstborns. And therefore, as Kenyans, we should be proud of this constitution. Let us not allow anyone to mutilate the constitution and take us back to the dark ages. And I love our judiciary. It has always protected the constitution. And our Chief Justice should walk shoulder high, and knowing that we have a nice judiciary, that it doesn't matter who has said it. If it is unconstitutional, it is unconstitutional.
Okay. And of course, we'll be circling back to those devolved units you're talking about. Of course, it brought about a devolution in the country, decentralizing of services. Given that we have an expert in terms of the intergovernmental relations, so since we have these particular documents, are you in a position to tell us where are we in terms of implementing it, especially within the government circle?
Okay, thank you very much. I think within implementing the constitution itself, we have made quite a number of milestone achievements in the 14 years that we are talking about today. And we have a lot to celebrate. One, because the whole issue of devolution itself is something that Kenyans should be celebrating about. I think the drafters of the constitution envisaged this kind of, governance, where we have two levels of government. And now that we have 48 governments, 47 county governments, and one national government, I think we are good to go. However, we know that we have some gaps, and I think, as Mr. Meli has mentioned, one of the biggest gaps that we failed to realize was that the Constitution in Article 189 envisaged that there would be a cooperation between the two levels of government. And so at the onset of devolution, there was a lot of competition. There was a lot of push and pull between the two levels of government. That, as IGRTC, we are working on just to, emphasize the fact that cooperation and consultation is a constitutional mandate. It's not by, decision or by will. It is a mandate and should be, respected, just like we respect the functional, assignments in every level of government. And therefore, where the national government, for example, is supposed to do a policy and the county government is supposed to implement that policy, there is need to cooperate, as the Constitution says. So in terms of achievement, I think we have made quite a lot, especially in basic services like health, agriculture, I think infrastructure. When you go to the counties now, we have hospitals that are functioning, doctors that are in the hospitals, working in the hospitals. That would not happen during, the other era, where you would find a hospital where the doctor does not even live there. The doctor operates from another town. But with devolution now, we can see, because governance is at the lowest level, we can see doctors living within the premises of the hospital and working from Monday to Sunday, attending to the people in the counties. And for me, if you ask the citizen of Kenya right now that would you wish, for instance, to go back, nobody would accept, because I think it's working for them. Of course, we expected that we would have challenges. We are having a lot of challenges, maybe corruption being one of them, not having fully implementation of the devolved functions as envisaged in Schedule 4. But those challenges should not make us feel like we are not moving. We are progressing in the right direction.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynette. Let me get the word of Professor. Professor, now the question is, given that we are yet to fully implement this document, are the framers of the Constitution seeing like we are headed in the right direction as a country?
Thank you. I think it is important when answering a question on whether we are making progress or not, to ask ourselves, what were the reasons for establishing the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and in particular, the introduction of the devolved system of government. And in my view, the introduction of this Constitution was, in a sense, a reaction to the challenges of governance that this country experienced under the centralized structure or form of government. There were many, many challenges, including, for example, access to services was problematic. Access to the leaders was problematic. My brother here said that sometimes people had to walk from one corner of the country to come to Nairobi to get services that would actually have been provided at the local level. And that was a challenge. One, because of the distance. Two, there was the cost of transport, the cost of how do you stay in Nairobi when you arrive for those services and so on, and many others. But the biggest problem perhaps was this idea of control. When you centralize power in a centralized or unitary system of government, the tendency is for those in charge, those who control power, to discriminate in terms of how you provide services. And that was a major problem. So the Constitution of Kenya 2010 then introduced a devolved system of government. And if you look at Article 174, I believe, they have indicated the objectives of devolution under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And if you carefully study those objectives, you find that they're actually saying that services should be closer to the people. The people in the places where they live should be able to influence governance. People should be able to participate in their governance. What we are seeing today is positive, because citizens at the county level, sub-county level, are actually engaging the leaders, whether they are political leaders or administrative leaders, and so on. So that is a positive thing. But I also want to say that 14 years in terms of implementing a new constitution, a radical constitution such as the one we have, is not a very long time. Because people have been used to the centralized system for a very long time, and it's not easy for them to make a transition just because a new constitution has been introduced. It will take some time. So as my colleagues have said, yes, there is progress being made. There's been progress being made, but there are also challenges, and we expect those challenges. A lot of them, in my view, those challenges have to do with the question of, have we fully understood and appreciated this constitution? Are we committed to this constitution? Particularly the leaders. I'm saying particularly the leaders because constitution is about power.
Yes.
It either takes away power from you or it gives you power. Now those leaders who had been used to centralized power will find it very difficult to fully commit themselves to a decentralized or a devolved system of government. So they will resist. And politicians are politicians. They have ways of resisting in a manner that sometimes not very apparent. So to me, that is a major problem that we need to deal with in terms of moving forward.
Okay. And of course, that is goodwill. Still on devolution, so the bigger question will be now, is it working as per now?
The constitution is working. If you look at it,
devolution itself.
Devolution is working, as you see. The only challenge that we have is the funds. The timely release of funds from the national government, the follow-up of the Auditor General on the things that are being done on the ground, because as we envisaged before, is that we expected the management to be at the lower level. We would expect that at the county level, things should work. But if you look at it, citizens are getting the services they deserve at the county level. I remember when you used to come to do land search at the land registry in Nairobi. Now you can do it at the county level. The teachers do not need to travel to Nairobi to find TSC. TSC is at the county level. You find so many other things that were being handled by the national government are now even devolved, even if it is still a national government function. They make sure that they are present in every county. You look at the issuance of birth certificates, now is done at the county level. You see the application of national identity cards are now more efficient than before. You would need to be vetted at the chief's office, then assistant chief, then you go to the chief, then the DO, then the DC, then you come to the PC level. By the time your documents arrive at the national level, a year is over. And that occasioned some things that you would find students not joining university. They would stay 2 years at home, the way the president was saying the other day, to join a university. Now, they finish, they apply for the national identity card, they get it, they join within the same year their results were come out. So the devolution is working. The only challenge we have is the funding. Because if the funds are released a month to the expiry of the financial year, are we being reasonable? Number two, if we have counties hiring people who are not qualified for the jobs that they are doing, it beats logic to get for example, somebody who has studied medicine handling education. It doesn't make sense. If you find somebody who has done, for example, education and now handling something else that is out of their scope.
But that is what is already happening in the county. You find the CEC of health is in the agricultural docket, yet the agricultural CEC is in the education sector.
Those are the challenges we are facing, and I think we need to constitutionalize professionalism. Constitutionalize professionalism, because those are the amendments now we need Parliament to help us to deal with. We also need to deal with accountability at the county level. You don't just employ people from your tribe because they voted you in large numbers. Remember, we are all Kenyans. The only thing they don't understand is that every leader should read the preamble of the Constitution. The spirit of the Constitution is in the preamble. If you read it, you just feel it. You feel part and parcel of it. Unfortunately, people get drunk with power, and once they get drunk with power, they forget the core function. Because if I were to make a road that leads to where my community, I tarmac it where my community stays, but I forget about the others, one day I'll find myself stuck in the other part. That is why I was saying, let us promote development throughout the country, because you don't know, professor doesn't know when next he will be asked to give a lecture. Perhaps there will be a university in Mandera, he will need to go and give a lecture there. But when he is concentrated on his region where he comes from, he forgets that he stays in Nairobi and he needs services in Nairobi. So the devolved units should work as a unitary factor of the national government also, because we are not just the 47 county governments. We also have a national government, and we have one unitary leader. And what if the president succeeds at the national level? We all succeed. If the governors, all the governors succeed at the county level, the Republic of Kenya is successful. Look at the other day, children have been admitted in different universities. Somebody comes from Western Kenya and goes to study in Garissa University. Somebody comes from Laikipia and goes to study in Moi University in Eldoret. If we don't follow up to the full implementation of the Constitution at the devolved units, we might end up thanking our governor from our region doing so well, but forget to rebuke the other governor who's not doing very well, because that is my area of where I'll work. So, and in the future, we should discourage Kenyans from going to vote in their rural homes. We have Kenyans going to rural areas during voting time. You go take your vote. For example, I come from Cherangani. I take my vote to Cherangani, elect, for example, a competent person in Cherangani, but I have forgotten that I live in Nairobi, where I should get a competent member of parliament from where I live, because that is where I get the services. And all of us should advocate for good governance.
And Lynette, earlier on you were talking about at the start of the devolution itself, there was this competition between the national and the county governments. There were no defined rules. Currently, as we speak, are the rules now defined so that they can work harmoniously?
Yeah, the rules, there are no rules. I mean, the Constitution is the guiding factor. And the Constitution is very clear that much as we are the counties are distinct, they are also interdependent. That means governments depend on each other. A county with another county, county with a national government. That is what was envisaged in the Constitution. And I think what we failed to emphasize was the fact that much as we were having distinct governments, there was need for cooperation, which is clearly articulated in Article 189, that these governments should work together. They are interdependent. And so that competition went on for some time. But I want to say that now we are realizing that there is need for a lot of cooperation. And as IGRTC, I think we have brokered a lot of, discussions between two levels of government, where even one government says, I want to give my function to the other level for a period of time, so that I can be able to get the capacity that I need to perform a specific function. That is cooperation that was envisaged. We are also now seeing, during policy making, the national government involving county governments. And of course, with our judiciary and with the judicial system, which has challenged a lot of decisions that were not made through public participation. I think now people are more aware that whichever level you are, there is need to involve the other level in form of public participation for a decision to be made. So for me, there was competition, yes, but we are seeing the reduction of that competition as we go on. And slowly people are beginning to realize that cooperation is needed. Recently we saw counties signing, agreements to do affordable housing. We know housing is a devolved function. But again, counties have agreed that national government can do some houses for us. And they have signed, MOUs. They have signed intergovernmental partnership agreements. That is the way to go. We are 48 governments, but that doesn't mean that we are going to work in silos. We are supposed to work together. As Mr. Meli has said, today I'm in Nairobi, but I come from the coast. I will need to travel there, and I will need a road. So if only a road is made in Nairobi, and in Makueni there is no road, and in Taita there is no road, how do I get home? So that cooperation is very, very important in terms of performance of our functions. And slowly, I think we are not there yet, but I believe as we continue to explore the Constitution itself and the articles that enhance this cooperation, we will be able to get there, and we will be able to progress well. Yeah.
And Prof, one of the major challenges that is truly coming out is balkanization. Even the framers of the Constitution, the people who decided to come up with this progressive document, have they adequately addressed it in that particular document? And what can we do as a country? Is there a good political will to ensure that we forego such things as balkanization within the country?
Let me say this. First of all, a constitution is a set of rules, to put it very simply, intended to guide the governance of a country. And as part of that set of rules, the Constitution also establishes structures that can then be used to govern the country. But beyond the rules and structures, there must be the human element. Are we in this country, and particularly our leaders, ready and committed to respect those rules, to respect the constitutional provisions, and to use the structures established by the Constitution to facilitate what we normally call good governance? My opinion is that in this country there is a challenge there. There's a challenge because we have very, very good constitution in terms of the rules, the structures, and so on. But in terms of actually implementing these rules, I think there is a challenge. And for me, the problem, as I indicated earlier, revolve around two issues. One is power. Reluctance by some leaders to, as it were, give out or give out power. They want to retain this power. The person who expects that power from the constitutional provision will try and resist. So we end up with tough wars, and that affects the actual implementation of the Constitution, including the devolved system. And on the basis of that, leaders will try to, as it were, protect their turf right? The second thing I want to say is this, that the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and when you talk about the devolution, we must think about the two levels of government. Devolution does not mean county level governments.
Yes.
It's the two levels of government. It's on the basis of that I agree with Lynette that actually this system, the devolution system or the devolved system of government will work if the two levels of government apply the provisions of Article 6 of the Constitution, which provides that these two levels of government are distinct, but they are also interdependent and are required to work in consultation and in cooperation. If that is not acceptable to political leaders, we will not get the system working efficiently. And you know, in this country over the years, politicians give the signal where they want things to go.
Change, yeah.
And when they give that signal, the administrators, and unfortunately also some professionals, begin to abandon their professionalism, abandon their administrative expertise, and follow what they see the politicians want. So to me, this is a major problem in the country.
Okay, Prof.
But I also believe that part of our problem has to do with our inability, failure, perhaps better, failure to actually read, understand, and appreciate this Constitution. And that applies even to many professionals. I've had cases where I discussed the Constitution with teachers of secondary schools, and you get surprised. A lot of them have not read the Constitution. They assume they know what the Constitution says. So these problems, you talk about balkanization and all, that has a lot to do with our failure as citizens to actually appreciate the Constitution and say when it's being misapplied, if you like, to say no. I agree there is a lot of attempts at public participation and checks on the executive, checks, especially at the county level. But I don't think it is enough. I think we should perhaps do more.
Okay. And if you're just joining us, we're talking about that particular document. You have been seeing images of the late Mwai Kibaki, of course, launching it there with the former Attorney General, that is Amos Wako, the framers of the constitutions themselves. While also there, we had various people visiting the country at that particular time, August 27th in 2010. There you can see those were the images back then in 2010 where we're hailing that particular document that has been guiding the country for the last 14 years or so. Talk to us on our social media platforms as we carry on with these thought-provoking discussions. We do have in the house here once again Lynette Mavui, member of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, Professor Peter Wanyande, a professor of political science and former CIC commissioner, and finally we have Sami Meli, a governance and a political expert. Sami, let me circle back to you. Still on devolutions, we have witnessed several impeachment of various governors for the last few years since devolution came about. Is this a testament that it is working, or there is a problem within the devolved units?
Now, if you can put checks on any leader, that means the Constitution is working. There was a time where we had leaders who you could not put checks on. For example, could you put checks on your DC at that time? He was authoritative. But now, this is a political DC called a governor, who is elected by the people from that county. Remember, we have come from a situation whereby we couldn't even air our views. Right now, we can even question the president. So when you see impeachment of governors, that means there's something that was wrong. Or there's something that is wrong with the governor, or there's something that is wrong with the leadership at the county level. Sometimes they are impeached because of their either admission or lack of it in dealing with an issue in the county. Because I would expect, for example, if it was an education issue, the CEC in charge of education at the county should be the one being impeached. But some governors are either hands-on or hands-off, because they perhaps interfere with the leadership of different things in the county, or they are just aloof and some things pass under their tables. Because if you were to append your signature on any government document and you are a governor, you are very responsible for it. If there is some funds, there are some funds that are supposed to be allocated to a certain issue that was not done, and you fail to look at that document and also follow up on the ground whether that thing is happening. So I think our constitution is helping us put checks and balances by impeachment, but we have failed to see even citizens themselves recalling their leaders, just because of the lack of education. But if you look at this constitution, it's very progressive and widely understood by Kenyans. Widely understood. I remember that Kenyan questioning the certain parliamentary committee and quoting the constitution as it is, that the citizens have sovereign power, okay? In as much as the constitution is supreme, the sovereign power belongs to the people. And if the MCS exercise that power, it is because it is donated to them by the people. So if you are a leader at the county level, you have to create some synergy. You have to create some cooperation between you and the MCS, between you and the others, and know every nook and cranny that is there in your county. Understand what is going on. Bring negotiations to the table. The only thing is ruling the county with an iron fist. If you rule the county with an iron fist, you are a product of impeachment. So our counties, our county governments are working. I love the way some of the county assemblies conduct themselves. You even see them prosecute their cases in the Senate, or even prosecute their cases on the floor of the House. And at that moment, you realize that there is something that is happening. There is something that is happening. Because I remember in 2005, when the other constitutional referendum was there, and that one was thrown away because somebody was pushing it to the people. Then the people realized we have power. We had now the Bomas conferences. Yes. I'm sure Prof was there, and perhaps even in a clause of this constitution, there must be an input the Prof put. I pride myself to have been part of the crowd that time. We were so happy at Uhuru Park. I came there as early as 4:30. I was seated. When that document was lifted, I saw hope. I saw a bright future in Kenya. But if you move around at the moment, there are areas that had never seen a tarmac road. There are areas that had never seen administrators come close to them. Now we are able to access remote areas. The governors are working, but some are not working. I remember there's a county, they elected a governor who never worked in the first term. He found himself again in the second term. So if you count backward, that county is backward around 10 years behind, as the others are moving forward. So as we also do election of these governors, make sure that you elect somebody who is a worker, somebody who will work for you. Don't look at the tribe. If we were to ask me, the people, for example, who ever enjoyed presidency twice or thrice during Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, if you look at central Kenya, you would still see the poverty in it. So in as much as we elect leaders, let's think about somebody who will change our lives. It doesn't matter where they come from. If we were to elect a Giriama, a Digo, but he's a worker, it's good. It doesn't matter how, even if an Ogiek, we get a leader who will take us forward. And this constitution, if you look at it, I think the word representatives need to be given even a kitty where they are able to do the developments in their wards on their own, because I don't think if already our ward is tarmacked, our priority is still not a tarmac road. We have other priorities. This constitution, through public participation, we should have a progressive development agenda. As I talked about last time, we should have what we call strategic plan per ward, per constituency, per county, and at the country level. We know that by Vision 2050 or 2063, when Africa will be marking 100 years, yes, how far would Kenya be? If you look at the development right now on internet connectivity, I'm liking some newcomers in the market who are taking our connection to the village level. And if you were to go now to your village where there was a problem with connectivity, you would find even your grandmother having a smartphone and even following this program at the moment. So things have worked. If you walk around the counties, you see new developments. For example, people are building permanent houses. You find a storied house in your village where people can even apply for contracts and tenders and do them. So what we still have as a challenge is the national government level. Not releasing funds on time, and not supporting the counties on time, because if you hear right now, the government, national government owes contractors up to 950 billion. That is money that is held. And that is why we should not even be complaining about the economy at the moment. It is just the government released that money, the shamba boy is paid, the shopkeeper is paid, the guy who's pushing handcarts there is paid, and at the end of the day we have money circulating in the country. Yes.
Let me go to Lynette now. We have seen some of the major issues that have been within the devolved units is corruption. Let's be honest, scandals left, right and center that have been pointed out by the Auditor General, especially in their reports that have been oversighted within the corridors of the August House. So has corruption, that is the main question, has corruption been devolved now?
Indeed, it's not a matter of having corruption devolved. I think corruption is everywhere. It was there, even during the centralized system of government, and it is there, both in national government and in county government. The issue right now, Abdi, is that now people can see, people are closer to governments, they're able to monitor what is happening, they're able to monitor their funds, and they're able to see where corruption is happening. I can tell you for a fact, for instance, one of the things that Prof has talked about is the issue of ethnicity. I think ethnicity is so rampant in our counties right now, especially one of the biggest challenges that we have experienced as a result of devolution. I think we did not foresee this coming, that at the onset of devolution, we didn't think that even the people who are going to be employed in the counties were going to be now based on where you come from. And right now it is very difficult for somebody to get a job in the county government in another county, except maybe for the towns like Nairobi and Mombasa. But in the other counties, it's very difficult to get a job. I can tell you ethnicity, which is corruption, nepotism, discrimination, is now a thing that we have to deal with. It's an elephant that we must deal with as Kenyans. And people in specific counties feel that this is our county and this is where I need to be. Well, at some point you may think it's a good thing that now people can get employment, because in the past people never used to get employment up there. But the discrimination and the nepotism that is there is also alarming, and it's a problem that we have to deal with as Kenyans. Corruption, yes, indeed, in a very big magnitude. Giving cuts to contractors, bribing to get employment. We cannot bury our heads in the sand and refuse to see this is happening. Even to get a job right now becomes very difficult. Who knows who? Not only in the county, even in the national government. So as a country, we need to have this conversation and assess ourselves, really. In fact, I was asking somebody recently, I can apply for a job in another country, and people will give me a job in another country, and they don't know me. And I apply a job in my own country, and I will not get a job where people know me. It's ironic. And I think as a country we need to sit and have a very deep conversation on how to deal with corruption, because it is eating up our society. There are people there who don't know anybody. So are you telling me their children will never get employment? There are people there who have heirs, you know, and we saw this even from the frustrations that were being aired by the Gen Z, you know. Students have finished university, very bright students, A students, and I've been a teacher, promising students that if you get an A, there's a hope for you in the future. There's a hope for a good job. And they get A, they go to the university, they have an engineering degree, they have a medical degree, but there's no job. And it's not like that they do not qualify. They have the merit, but they do not get the opportunity because of corruption. And so I can say that we have to admit we have a problem. As a country, we have a problem, and it's not only in the counties, it is in our country that we must deal with. Yes.
I think that is a very important point she's making. If you're honest with yourself, corruption has become part of our life in this country.
Yes.
And it is not confined to any level of government. Just walk or drive along our roads. Let's be fair. Let us be frank about this thing. A lot of public service vehicles are stopped by the police, right? And the drivers, the conductors shake the hands of the policeman and they are waved on. This is common. It is even here in Nairobi, in our streets in Nairobi. In other words, there are different forms of corruption. It is not just that embezzlement of funds in an office or paying contractors that don't, you know, have not done the job and so on. It takes so many forms. The Constitution requires at the county level that a certain percentage of employees of a county must be people who are not from that ethnic group in which, you know, it provides for that. But as she says, that is being overlooked. And that is why I say that the rules are important, but the human element is paramount. If we don't change our behavior, if we don't change our values, the Constitution will not help us. There are people who are powerful and they will protect the corrupt. That is another issue that should be addressed. Why should the corrupt be protected? You know, we are behaving in this country using our, what I call pre-modern values. And yet we are in a modern era. This is clear on our roads, the way we want to cut shortcuts to access service. It is just, it's worrying. And unless we address these things, we will not make the kind of development they're talking about. Yes, the counties are working. You can't say they're not working. There's a lot going on. There are many facilities that have been created, you know, health facilities, there are schools, there are roads, and all these things by counties. But that is not enough. That is not enough. Another problem that I see is, you know, in the Constitution, there are these things we call shared functions. You know, there are functions,
Yes.
there are national government functions, and there are others that are strictly for county government, but there are also shared functions. Most of the shared functions, you will find that it is the policy element that is allocated to the national government. The implementation is left to the counties. But we are seeing cases where policy is made by government, national government, but that national government also attempts to implement the policy. The glaring example is the housing, the so-called affordable housing. You know, people are confused. Housing is a devolved function. But housing policy, we agree, is a national government function. But it should stop at policy, so that then the counties do the actual implementation. I know there have been these arguments that the counties lack the capacity. But the Constitution also provides that the national government has a responsibility to build that capacity at the county government level. Is that happening? Our fear is that the national government may use this lack of capacity as an excuse to actually engage in roles and functions that belong to the county government. I think we need to be careful about this. But beyond that, you know, I believe in rules and structures and so on. But this human element, to me, is so important that we must not overlook it as we discuss the successes and failures of the devolved system of government.
Okay, Prof.
There are functions that, I think it was early this year, the president said they must be devolved. Attempts were made, and my sister here perhaps understands that better because she's in the IGRTC. Attempts were made, then it got stuck somewhere. Some PS in the Ministry of Housing said there was something wrong. So it was sent back. Efforts were made again by the IGRTC, and it is now, I don't know how many months. I understand it is lying somewhere in the AG chambers, you know, Attorney General, because he has also got a role to play in that. Now, this kind of thing leads some of us to think that it is deliberately being blocked, it's deliberately being curtailed by the national government. But finally, on this, you know, language is very important, my brother and sister. And I'm not very good in Kiswahili. But I hear people, even on media, even on studios like this, talking about the national government in terms of Serikali Kuu. And the county government, I don't even know what they call it. Now, the Constitution is very clear. In fact, in Article 6, they are distinct and they are interdependent. It does not give them a hierarchy. But when you talk of the national government as being Serikali Kuu, you are saying that is, hierarchically, it is up there, the others are down here, and that is going to create a problem in terms of how these two levels of government relate. Because we are telling them that the national government is up there, you are down here, and so you must, as it were, respect. I think this is so important to me that we need to debate it and let us use the right language when we are talking about these levels of government.
Okay, Prof. That is a lesson we have gotten there as members of the Fourth Estate. Melly, as you respond to the same issues, but looking at the independent offices, we do have independent offices such as the Control of Budget, we have the Auditor General's Office, the EACC. These are even constitutionally protected offices, independent offices. So have we done enough to support them and well-resource them?
Let me start with the last one, the independent offices. We have independent offices, especially the independent commissions. I don't think even the citizens themselves are aware that they are as independent as they should be by the spirit of the Constitution. The other day, you look at teachers negotiating with the TSC and putting aside SRC. SRC is mandated by the Constitution, not by me, not by the President, by the Constitution, to do any negotiations on salary, increments, the CBS, and they should be part and parcel of every discussion where it comes to allowances and salaries. So we are either living like a warthog, they see danger, then once there is some peace, we continue grazing until the danger arrives. That's when we start running. And helter-skelter here, going to court and the rest. So the respect for independent offices. Like the other day, people would question the president when it is the office of the Inspector General of Police, which is independent, that should be questioned about the conduct of the police. And we have independent offices like IPOA, where it checks on that. So we forget that we should deal with independent offices and look at their duties, their allocated duties, and follow them through it to the latter. If I come back to Professor's issue, the introduction of the devolved units of government was to deflower the presidency, to make the presidency less attractive. Unfortunately, over the years, the last 14 years, we have made it back to how it was. We wanted a situation whereby anyone can run for presidency and we don't care, but we concentrate at the county level. And check, we want a professional to run our county, as somebody who can work for us. This is the person we should look at. Nairobians should look at Johnson Sakaja as the leader who will implement most of their issues. Unfortunately, the national government, as Professor said, doesn't want to release some of the functions that have been developed. And at the same time, the county governments want to run away from a function that they have been given when there is a challenge. So in the spirit of the Constitution, and I think there should be somebody who wakes up every morning like Mwadhini pale msikitini, wasomea hawa viongozi, reading the Constitution to these leaders. So they understand their roles, they understand their duties, they know that the omission or commission of some things is either fully in their offices or depends on the other side. Because now, the things we sometimes forget is that we are one nation called Kenya. There is no county that is independent from Kenya. We are all dependent on Kenya. The county governments, as the professor has said it, we are, and my sister here, Lynette, we have 48 governments. And sometimes you hear members of parliament who are members of the legislative arm of government calling the president that government as though they were not in the government. But before they were elected, did they know that they were running for member of parliament? And parliament is the legislative arm of government. And the government has three arms: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Where do you belong? Do you belong to the legislature? Then you are government. Do you belong to the judiciary? Then you are government. If you belong to the executive, you are government. The only thing the Constitution has given the responsibility is for the president at the top there to be the apex or the pivotal point where these other governments rotate. If they have to come together, if they have to expand, it's through the presidency. But the other functions, we are working. All the 47 county governors should know that they are employees of a country called Kenya. They are employed by employers known as Kenyans. They are not employed by Luyas because you are from Bungoma or Kakamega. You are not employed by Kikuyus because you come from Kiambu or where. You are employed by Kenyans. And sometimes even they overlook the minorities who are within themselves because that is a voting constituency. Yes, the president knows that he has a bigger constituency called Kenya. And if you look at the older constitution, let me educate a few of us who had never read the older constitution. The president was a member of parliament. By the time we promulgated the constitution of 2010, Mwai Kibaki was member of parliament of Othaya, at the same time president. And there seemed to have been a way where funds or good things go to Othaya and not to other constituencies in the republic. But when the devolved units came in, you would see now Turkana, Lodwar town developing, Turkana developing, Mandera developing. You see, it's like they were mushrooming of new projects. And if we not safeguard that by being building enough checks and balances, Kenyans do not understand that you can question the government as an individual. You don't need a mob. You can take it to court if there is a violation of a constitutional right. And we have the Bill of Rights that is very broad-based. People who are in death row now knows that there is no time they will be hanged. They are just waiting for their death, the natural one, because the Constitution guarantees it.
Lynette, as you respond to the same issue, we're talking about Chapter 6 of the Constitution. It is very clear when it comes to leadership and integrity. So will this remain just letters on this 2010 document, or are we going to see being implemented down the line?
Thank you, Abdi. And I think before I even respond to that, let me pick from what he's talking about and say that there's a lot of ignorance in Kenya. Ignorance as far as the Constitution is concerned. This Constitution of Kenya is a very simple document to read. It does not have the junk that used to be there in the language that was so complicated. It's like a storybook. Anybody can read. But Kenyans have not read the Constitution to understand it. And that's why you realize that sometimes the demands may not be, viable. But I can also say civil society has also dropped the ball. I think before, during transition period, civil society was very active with civic education, educating people on the Constitution, trying to educate people even at grassroots level. But we rarely see them nowadays. The assumption is that everybody knows the Constitution, which is not even true. In fact, you go to schools, you realize even the students don't even know what the what the role of the MP is, what the role of the governor is. Simple things like the role of the ward administrator, the role of the sub-county administrator are not known. Those are things like the young generation are leaving it to the older generation like us. I doubt whether anybody even in school bothers to even educate students on the role of these leaders. And I think civil society needs to pick it up and continue what they used to do, educating the citizen on the Constitution. It's a simple Constitution that anybody can understand. But back to your question, I think matters of values and integrity are very personal. It has to come from within. Somebody must decide, for example, to be upright. And even though you may read, everybody reads chapter 6, especially when you want even a job, you will read chapter 6 and go and narrate it as you are being interviewed, as you are being vetted. But once you get into the office, you forget what you subscribed to. And so it is an opportunity for us to also look inside and as Kenyans decide to change. This should not remain as a book. It should be something that should be implemented starting from ourselves. When we look at corruption, for example, corruption is happening in offices, but do you know corruption begins at home? Corruption begins even with a parent, bribing a child, telling a child, if you do this, I will give you this. And so those, small values that we need to put into our own selves and our own, behaviors, we need to make decisions on our own. Maybe religion has to come in there. The mosques and the churches now have to wake up and put these things right. But we have a big challenge, even as far as chapter 6 is concerned. There are things that are written in the, guiding us, but again, it depends on people themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. As we wind up, Prof, we have seen several attempts to change this document. People have been calling for referendum. If you remember the famous Punguza Mizigo, even so in the latest one, the National Dialogue Committee, that is the NADCO report, had made various recommendations that would have seen the 2010 document altered. So are these attempts futile because the document is not yet fully implemented in the country?
I think it is, to be direct, I think it is too early to talk about altering the Constitution. I think we need to give it time, document the challenges that we are having with every chapter, if they are there, and then think through it and see how we improve on those. I think it is too early. But as we said earlier on, this Constitution is meant to be transformative. It's supposed to transform and change the way we govern ourselves as a country. And that requires that we understand and appreciate every provision in the Constitution. My sister here talked about chapter 6 on leadership integrity. But if you look at Article 10 of the Constitution, it actually lists the values that should guide not just the leaders, but we as citizens. And if we applied those values, if we respected those values, I think the Constitution will have served a major purpose. As a transformative Constitution, I sometimes wonder why, for example, the head of state goes all over the country dishing out so-called development projects. I think that is one area that needs to be transformed. development is provided through development plans, resource allocation, and so on. Parliament has a role to play in it, and so on. Okay. And I think this idea of getting one individual to appear to be dishing out development negates the transformative intentions of this constitution.
Okay, thank you so much. And we leave it at that, given that we are out of time. Thank you so much. That was Professor Peter Wanyande, Professor of Political Science and former CIC Commissioner. Thank you for coming in, Prof, today. And of course, Lynette, a member of the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee. Thank you for making time for us. And then finally, you have been here severally. So it's Sami Meli, a governance and political expert. And of course, we wanted to make it a habit so that you can also come in. Hopefully that has been a very fruitful discussion. Continue talking to us on our social media platforms at KBC, Channel 1, at Abdiaziz Hashim as well. We'll be carrying on the conversation, but in a different format. We want to look at what is happening within the education sector, what strides have we made, especially when it comes to learners with special needs. And we even recently saw the industrial action that was called off by none other than COPET. So what are these some of the missing gaps within the education sector that needs to be addressed so that at the end of the day it can abide to the right of education, which is envisaged as well within the 2010 document. Don't go too far. We still have that and much more on the other side of the break.